The ballroom went silent as I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. My brother's new wife had just said the words that cut deeper than any knife. She doesn't run anything. Let her eat with the staff. My own family looked away as if I were invisible. In that moment, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply picked up my phone and made one call. The call that would bring their entire empire crashing down. What would you do if your own family humiliated you in front of hundreds after years of living off your work? This is the story of how I walked out of my brother Reese's wedding and took his fortune with me. The story of betrayal never starts with betrayal. It starts with trust. And for Olivia, trust had always meant Jason, her brother, her closest ally. Or at least, that's what she wanted to believe. Growing up, Jason was the golden boy, the one everyone noticed. Teachers praised him, relatives doted on him, and their parents placed the weight of the family legacy on his shoulders. Olivia, on the other hand, became the quiet shadow. She was the one who carried extra notebooks, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who kept Jason out of trouble when his confidence tilted into recklessness. It didn't feel unfair at first. She told herself, this is how families work. One star shines, the others hold up the sky. When their father's company, Atlas, staggered on the edge of collapse, Jason was appointed the young CEO. The world clapped for him. Newspapers ran headlines, "The heir to Atlas leads the way." Investors beamed with pride at the visionary who promised to steer the ship. But behind closed doors, Jason was drowning. The numbers didn't add up. He stared at balance sheets like they were written in a foreign language. Olivia watched him late at night, his shoulders slumped, the shine of his confidence cracking. She knew the company wasn't just sinking, it was seconds from vanishing. That's when she stepped in. She wasn't the one on magazine covers. She wasn't the one giving speeches about innovation. But she was the one on the phone at 2 a.m, persuading a reluctant investor to hold steady. She was the one redesigning operational flow, cutting inefficiencies, restructuring deals that no one else had the patience to untangle. While Jason posed for interviews, Olivia dug through mountains of debt and clawed the company back from the abyss. And she did it without complaint. Because that's what family meant, didn't it? You give. You sacrifice. You trust that someday, someone will see your effort. The world saw Atlas reborn. Articles praised Jason as the savior of a sinking empire. Her parents glowed with pride. "That's our son," her mother would say, clutching the paper like it was scripture. Olivia sat in the corner of the room, listening. She smiled faintly, never correcting the story. Her name wasn't mentioned, but her fingerprints were everywhere. She convinced herself it didn't matter. What mattered was that the company survived. What mattered was that her brother succeeded. Jason even looked at her one night after a shareholder meeting, his expression soft, almost vulnerable. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Liv," he murmured. And for her, that was enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to keep believing that her place, though invisible, was still vital. But deep inside, a quiet ache had already started to grow, because no matter how much she gave, she was always outside the frame. At family dinners, Jason was toasted as the future. At board meetings, her suggestions were rephrased by him and applauded as genius. Her parents never questioned it. They simply accepted the narrative they preferred. And Olivia, time after time, swallowed her pride. She told herself she was patient, that one day, when the dust settled, they would recognize her worth. But the truth was simpler and far more brutal. They had already decided who she was, the quiet one, the helper, the sister who fetched coffee, the background figure who kept the gears turning but never touched the wheel. The trust she built, the sacrifices she made, were bricks in a house that would never be hers. And the cracks in that foundation were already spreading. The strange thing about betrayal is that it rarely arrives like a thunderclap. More often, it seeps in quietly, Through silence, through omissions, through the little ways people show you exactly how little you mean to them. For Olivia, the first cracks were so small, she almost convinced herself she imagined them. She'd sit in boardrooms while Jason held court, flashing that smile he'd perfected for cameras. He'd repeat financial strategies word for word, strategies she'd painstakingly developed, without so much as a nod in her direction. Investors clapped, shareholders murmured approval. Olivia would lower her eyes, biting the inside of her cheek until she tasted copper, telling herself, "It doesn't matter who gets the credit. What matters is that Atlas survives." But the taste of blood lingered long after the applause died down. At family gatherings, the pattern repeated itself. Her parents brimmed with pride when Jason walked into a room. "That's our boy," her father would beam, as if Jason alone had resurrected the company from the ashes. Her mother fussed over him, straightening his tie, smoothing down his collar, as though he were still the golden child she had to polish before presenting to the world. And Olivia? She was handed plates to set, errands to run, drinks to refill. She was the dutiful daughter, seen, but never really seen. One evening she overheard a conversation she wasn't meant to. Jason and her father were in the study. The heavy oak door cracked just enough for voices to drift through. "Liv doesn't need to be in the spotlight," her father said, his voice casual. "She's not built for it." Jason chuckled. "Yeah, she's better in the background. You know, support staff." The words hit like a slap. Support staff. She stood frozen in the hallway, clutching a stack of files she had prepared for Jason, files that would later win him another round of praise. Her chest ached, a hollow pressure pressing against her ribs. She wanted to burst in, to scream, "I saved you! I saved both of you!" But instead she turned away, her throat tight, and delivered the files in silence. Because that was the role they had written for her. The shadow, the helper, the girl with no voice. The cracks widened at Jason's engagement party. It was a glittering affair at a rooftop venue, all champagne fountains and carefully curated guest lists. Olivia arrived in a dress she had chosen with care, elegant, understated, something that wouldn't outshine but wouldn't embarrass. She barely made it 2 steps inside before she felt it. Eyes skimming past her, conversations that broke off when she approached. A cousin offered her a glass of wine and then turned back to her circle without another word. But it was Madison, Jason's fiancée, who drove the knife deeper. "Olivia," Madison said brightly, the kind of brightness that cuts. "So glad you could make it. I was worried you might be too busy with whatever it is you do." The group around her laughed softly. Not cruelly, not loudly, just enough to let Olivia know she was the punchline. She smiled. She always smiled. That was her armor. But inside, something fractured. Later that night, Jason gave a toast. He spoke about family, about how Madison completed him, about how Atlas was thriving under his leadership. The room erupted in applause, cheers, tears of pride. Olivia clapped too, quietly, alone. Her glass trembled in her hand as she lifted it, not from alcohol, but from the sheer force of keeping herself contained. She looked around the room, her parents glowing, Madison radiant, Jason soaking in adoration, and realized something that twisted her gut. They didn't just forget her. They preferred her absence. Her invisibility made their illusion cleaner, sharper, easier to believe. And so the cracks spread further. Each slight, each omission, each moment of calculated indifference. It was no longer about being overlooked. It was about being erased. The marble floor gleamed like a mirror, reflecting chandeliers that sparkled like constellations. Every detail of Jason's wedding screamed perfection. Cascading orchids, gold archways, the faint perfume of roses laced with roasted lamb. It was the kind of wedding you see in glossy magazines, the kind that proves a family has made it. Olivia arrived 15 minutes early, not out of excitement, not out of love, but out of duty. That deeply ingrained instinct to show up, even when no one asked her to, even when she knew they didn't want her there. Her heels clicked softly against the ballroom floor as she crossed the room. Familiar faces turned away. An aunt glanced at her, then back to her wine. A cousin smiled, thin-lipped, before pivoting back into her circle. No hostility, just indifference. That, somehow, was worse. At the front of the ballroom stood the seating chart, written in elegant calligraphy. Jason and Madison, Table 1, Parents, Table 2, Bridal Party, Table 3. She scanned once, then twice. Her name was nowhere. Confused, she approached the wedding planner, clipboard in hand, smile rehearsed. "Excuse me," Olivia said, steady but polite. "I don't see my name." The planner scanned her list. A small frown flickered, gone in an instant. "Ah, yes, Miss Olivia, Table 14. Table 14? It's toward the back." The planner didn't meet her eyes. Near the kitchen, there were some late changes. Late changes, of course. Olivia nodded, though her stomach twisted. She didn't need to ask who made the change. She already knew. Her heels carried her past the laughter and clinking glasses, deeper into the shadows of the ballroom. With each step, the music softened, replaced by the clatter of pots, the hiss of steam, the metallic slam of kitchen doors. Table 14 was tucked into a corner near the service entrance. The tablecloth was wrinkled, the silverware mismatched. 2 catering staff were sitting there on break, one leaping up in embarrassment as she approached. That's when it happened. A voice floated through the air, clear, cold, calculated, perfectly pitched to be heard. "She doesn't run anything. Let her eat with the staff." Madison, the bride. Her white dress glittered as she stood arm in arm with Jason, surrounded by their polished friends. Olivia froze. Her mother adjusted a flower arrangement. Her father found the dance floor suddenly fascinating. And Jason, her brother, the boy she had saved time and time again, looked at her for one agonizing second, and then looked away. That silence, that cowardly silence from her own family, burned hotter than the insult itself. Her throat tightened, her eyes stung, but the tears didn't fall, because in that instant, something inside Olivia shattered. The years of patience, the swallowing of pride, the sacrifices she had convinced herself were worth it. All of it combusted into nothing. They had written her role, and this was the final line. Invisible, disposable, irrelevant. What they didn't know, what Madison certainly didn't know, was that Olivia was not a prop in their play. She was the architect of their empire. The $30 million merger Jason bragged about, the one that would secure Atlas's future, it hinged on one final signature. Hers. The room seemed to tilt. The laughter in the distance grew faint, like echoes down a tunnel. Olivia's humiliation drained into something colder, sharper, a new kind of calm. She slipped her hand into her clutch, pulling out her phone. No trembling fingers, no hesitation. She dialed the head of investments, a man who answered only to her. He picked up on the first ring. "Yes?" "Cancel the contract," Olivia said, her voice like glass, clear, sharp, unbreakable. A beat of silence. Then, "Understood." She hung up. Behind her, a spoon dropped, clattering against the floor. Heads turned. The atmosphere shifted, a ripple no one could name but everyone could feel. Jason's mouth parted slightly, confusion flickering across his face. Madison's champagne glass trembled. Her mother's face drained pale. They didn't know what had happened yet, but they sensed it. Something irreversible. Olivia rose from her seat, the chair scraping softly against the floor. She didn't argue, she didn't explain, she didn't scream. She simply walked, past the kitchen doors, past the startled guests, past the family who had chosen silence over her, and with her, she carried the weight of their empire, an empire she had just set on fire. The night of the wedding, Olivia didn't cry. That surprised her. She had expected tears, the kind that burn your cheeks, the kind that leave you gasping on the bathroom floor. But as she walked through the cold night air, heels clicking against marble steps, her eyes were dry. The silence outside the ballroom was almost holy. The muffled laughter and music behind her felt like echoes from another universe, one she no longer belonged to. She paused at the edge of the parking lot, the city lights stretching endlessly before her, and for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to feel it fully. Not just anger, not just betrayal, but the absolute clarity of knowing, I was never part of them. Not really. Her phone buzzed in her hand, another notification from the company group chat. Jason's team celebrating, investors posting congratulations, articles already surfacing about the brilliant merger that would catapult Atlas into a new era. All of it built on her work, her signature. Except the merger no longer existed. And that secret, that small, silent detonation she had triggered, hummed in her chest like a second heartbeat. It should have scared her. It should have left her doubting. But instead, it steadied her. She remembered the email, the one she wasn't supposed to see. Charlotte Fairchild, the powerful heiress whose family controlled the deal, had meant to write Jason. Instead, she copied Olivia. And there it was, in black and white. Once she signs, we're done babysitting her. She'll be irrelevant. Irrelevant. The word replayed in Olivia's mind, a drumbeat that would not stop. That was who she was to them, to Jason, to Madison, to her parents, even to her so-called partners. Not the strategist who saved their legacy, not the one who pulled Atlas from the flames. Just a checkbox, a signature, a means to an end. Her silence, they thought, meant weakness. But Olivia knew better now. Her silence had never been weakness. It was strategy. For years, she had given them her work, her nights, her brilliance, and they had consumed it, ungrateful, unseeing. They built their palace on her labor, and when the palace was complete, they locked her out, told her to sit by the kitchen. So maybe it was time to build something of her own. Not just to prove a point, not just for revenge, but to show them that she had never needed their table. She could build her own empire, taller, sharper, untouchable. And the thought didn't terrify her. It electrified her. Olivia began to sketch plans in her mind that very night. She thought of the startups she had quietly invested in over the years, the tech firms that owed her favors, the real estate ventures she'd bankrolled without Atlas ever knowing. Seeds she had planted in silence, almost as a hobby. Now she saw them differently, not as side projects, but as roots of a forest, a network of power that no one could see until it was too late. Jason had the spotlight, Madison had the crown. Her parents had their golden boy. Olivia had the shadows. And shadows, she realized, are where revolutions are born. The next morning she woke before dawn. She brewed coffee, sat at her kitchen table, and pulled out a notebook. On the first page, she wrote one word: Atlas. Then she drew a line through it. On the next page, she wrote, mine. She began mapping names, companies, contacts. She thought about which suppliers were most loyal to her, which investors trusted her phone call over Jason's, which journalists owed her favors. She remembered the quiet gratitude in people's eyes when she had stepped in to help, not for the cameras, not for the credit, but because she could. Jason thought he commanded loyalty. What he commanded was applause, temporary, conditional. Olivia commanded something deeper: respect, trust, and those are currencies far more valuable than stock prices. As the sun rose, golden light spilling across her kitchen, she felt it. The shift. The old Olivia, the one who swallowed pride, who sat at the back, who told herself, someday they'll notice. She was gone. In her place was someone new, someone sharper, someone patient enough to dismantle an empire piece by piece and rebuild it under her own name. Revenge, she realized, wasn't just about making them hurt. It was about reclaiming the power they had stolen from her all along. And for the first time in years, Olivia smiled. Not the practiced smile of politeness, not the hollow smile of endurance, but the quiet, dangerous smile of someone who knows exactly what she's about to do. Olivia knew revenge wasn't about fireworks. It wasn't about a single explosive moment. Revenge was endurance, precision, 1,000 quiet cuts that no one noticed until the body was already bleeding out. So she worked, not loudly, not like Jason, who needed every deal to be splashed across headlines, who couldn't breathe without applause. Olivia's grind was invisible. It happened at 5 a.m. phone calls, whispered meetings in hotel lobbies, dinners with venture capitalists who preferred discretion over spectacle. She called it the reconstruction. Brick by brick, she was building something Atlas could neither see nor stop. Her first step was securing the alliances Jason had neglected. Suppliers he bullied, employees he underpaid, partners he ignored. Olivia remembered every slight, every complaint brushed aside at family dinners. And when she reached out, people listened. Not because she promised them the world, but because she had been the only Fairchild who ever listened in the first place. She gave them what Jason never could: respect. She didn't need to buy loyalty. She harvested it. Weeks blurred into months. Olivia played the part of the forgotten sister perfectly. She still attended board dinners, still smiled politely at investors, still let Jason parade Madison across society pages as though Atlas's future had already been written. But under the table? Her pen was busy. She quietly consolidated her startup investments into a holding company, registered overseas, clean, untraceable. She began acquiring patents through shell firms, small ones, obscure enough that Jason wouldn't notice, but each one a gear in a machine she was already designing. And when she signed the contracts, she used her middle name. Never Olivia Fairchild, only Evelyn Marks. A ghost. A mask. She wanted Jason to laugh at her absence. She wanted him to believe she had disappeared into irrelevance. Because irrelevance made people sloppy. The more she vanished from Atlas's radar, the more ruthless she became. Her second step was people. Olivia knew corporations didn't collapse because of bad strategy. They collapsed because people left. Quietly, invisibly, like sand slipping from a clenched fist. So she targeted the overlooked, the project managers, the engineers, the analysts who actually ran Atlas while Jason claimed credit. She invited them to coffee. She asked questions no one else bothered to ask. What would you change if you were in charge? What's the one problem no one at Atlas has solved? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And then she offered them something Jason never had. Ownership. Not just a salary, not just a title, but a stake. A piece of the empire she was building. One by one, they said yes. Quietly. Cautiously. And Olivia never demanded loyalty up front. She let them come to her in their own time. Because she knew that the ones who came by choice were the ones who would never betray her. By the end of the first year, she had 40 of Atlas's best hidden in her pocket. And Jason had no idea. The third step was patience. Olivia didn't need a grand strike. She needed 1,000 small ones. A supplier suddenly pulling out. A merger mysteriously stalled. A critical patent suddenly locked in court. Jason raged. Madison soothed. The family whispered about bad luck. But Olivia knew luck had nothing to do with it. She had engineered the grind so meticulously that by the time Jason noticed the cracks, they would already be faults. And when he scrambled to fix them, his arrogance would be his undoing. Because Jason didn't believe in shadows. He believed the world was made of applause and headlines. He couldn't imagine that the woman smiling politely across the dinner table was the very one starving his empire from within. Every night, Olivia returned to her notebook. The first one had filled quickly. Charts, arrows, connections. The second one was almost full too. She stacked them on her desk like a general stacking battle plans. But unlike Jason, she didn't need soldiers. She needed believers. And she had them now. By the second year, whispers about Evelyn Marks began to spread in venture circles. A mysterious investor with uncanny timing. A woman who seemed to always know when to move, when to pull out, when to strike. Her portfolio grew. Biotech, AI, logistics, energy. Each investment small enough to avoid suspicion, but collectively, a juggernaut in the making. Jason was too busy basking in his own reflection to notice, but others noticed. The same journalists who had ignored Olivia before began chasing rumors. Who was Evelyn Marks? Why did her name keep appearing in filings, acquisitions, patents? Olivia didn't stop them. She let the mystery grow. Because power is not only what you hold, it's what people believe you might hold. 3 years after the wedding, Olivia stood at the edge of a rooftop in Manhattan, wind tangling her hair, watching Atlas's logo shine across the skyline. To the world, Atlas still looked untouchable. But Olivia knew the truth. She had hollowed it out, not destroyed it. Not yet. That would be too merciful. Her grind had been patient, careful, unrelenting. Atlas was bleeding, quietly, invisibly. By the time Jason realized it, it wouldn't just collapse. It would devour him on the way down. And Olivia would be there, standing in the shadows, not with tears in her eyes, but with that same dangerous smile she had worn on the night of the wedding. The smile of someone who had turned betrayal into blueprint and obsession into empire. For 3 years, Olivia's revenge had been invisible. A whisper here, a delay there. Atlas was still standing, still shining in the headlines, but its foundation was already cracking. Olivia wasn't impatient. She had always known the grind was the hard part, but she also knew this. Patience alone didn't destroy men like Jason. You had to give them fear. Not all at once, just enough to make them feel the ground shift under their feet. And so, one winter evening, Olivia made her move. It began with a deal Jason couldn't afford to lose. Atlas had been courting Helios Tech, a European defense contractor, for over a year. The merger would cement Jason's reputation, triple Atlas's reach, and give him the legacy he craved. Newspapers already had their headlines ready. Fairchild Vision expands global. Jason bragged about it at dinners, in interviews to anyone who would listen. But on the morning of the signing, Helios pulled out. Their official statement was polite, almost apologetic. After careful consideration, we have decided to pursue alternative partnerships more aligned with our long-term vision. Jason was livid. He threw his phone across the boardroom, screamed at his executives, demanded answers. But no one could explain it. Not the analysts, not the lawyers, not even Madison, who had learned to soothe Jason's rage with her carefully trained smile. Jason's empire had been humiliated. And yet, Olivia wasn't done. Because Helios hadn't simply walked away. They had signed with another investor, a quiet holding company, a mysterious figure known only as Evelyn Marks. Olivia made sure the news leaked. Not her name, not her face, just the whispers. Who is Evelyn Marks? How did she outmaneuver Atlas? Journalists speculated. Competitors cheered. Investors started asking Jason questions he couldn't answer. For the first time in his career, Jason Fairchild looked like he was losing. At the next family gathering, Olivia watched him carefully. Jason arrived late, jaw tight, hand gripping Madison's like a lifeline. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch before even saying hello. The room was filled with laughter, glasses clinking, polite conversations about markets and politics. But Olivia's eyes never left him. He looked older, not by much, but enough. The strain of Helios's betrayal was written in the lines of his forehead, the sharpness of his voice, the way he barked at a waiter for forgetting ice. For the first time, Jason was off balance, and Olivia savored it. The second strike was smaller, quieter, but no less devastating. One of Atlas's flagship products, a revolutionary logistics platform, suddenly became tangled in a patent dispute. Lawyers scrambled, markets trembled, and Jason found himself facing months, possibly years, of costly litigation. Behind the scenes, Olivia had orchestrated the whole thing. The patent wasn't new. Jason had ignored it years ago, dismissing the inventor as irrelevant. Olivia had tracked that man down, funded him, gave him the resources to fight back, and now, that irrelevant patent had teeth sharp enough to bleed Atlas dry. Jason raged again. His board whispered, investors wavered, and Olivia smiled. By the third strike, Jason was no longer angry. He was scared. It came in the form of betrayal, but not hers. It was his. One of Atlas's senior executives, a man Jason had mocked for years, suddenly resigned. Not only did he leave, but he took half a dozen engineers with him. Their destination? A new venture. Backed by the elusive Evelyn Marks. Jason didn't say her name aloud, but Olivia knew he had heard it. He had seen it in filings, in contracts, in whispered reports from his increasingly nervous advisors. And late at night, in the silence of his penthouse, Jason began asking himself the question Olivia wanted him to ask. Who the hell is Evelyn Marks? Olivia didn't reveal herself, not yet. That would be too easy, too merciful. Instead, she let Jason stew in paranoia. She let him pace his office at 3 a.m., poring over documents, convinced his enemies were multiplying. She let him snap at Madison, accuse her of being careless, unfaithful, disloyal. She let the board lose faith, their once confident leader now a man second-guessing every move. And through it all, she remained invisible. The quiet sister, the polite guest at family dinners, the woman who smiled sweetly while Jason unraveled. Her empire was growing. His was rotting. And he didn't even know the knife in his back had his sister's fingerprints on it. But Olivia did something more dangerous than sabotage. She gave Jason hope. Because the first strike wasn't designed to destroy him. It was designed to make him fight harder, to exhaust himself, to burn through his resources, to reveal just how fragile his empire truly was. The more he struggled to save Atlas, the deeper he would sink into the trap she had built. And when the time finally came for the final strike, when Olivia chose to reveal herself, Jason wouldn't just lose. He would watch everything he had built collapse on top of him. And he would know, without a shred of doubt, that the person who had destroyed him wasn't some faceless rival. It was his sister. The sister he had underestimated. The sister he had betrayed. The sister who had turned her obsession into empire. Jason Fairchild believed Atlas was unbreakable. But on a cold February night, as headlines screamed about Evelyn Marks and markets shivered with doubt, Jason sat alone in his glass office, staring out over the city. And for the first time in his life, he felt it. Fear. Not of losing money, not of losing power, but of losing control. And Olivia knew. The first strike had landed. The war had truly begun. Jason Fairchild had always been a man of control. He controlled boardrooms with his voice, markets with his deals, people with his money. But control, he was learning, was fragile. It broke at night, when the city outside his penthouse was silent, and his glass walls reflected a face he didn't recognize. Gaunt, sleepless, lined with worry. It broke in meetings, when investors asked questions he couldn't answer, when journalists smirked as though they knew something he didn't. And it broke every time he saw the name. Evelyn Marks. At first, Jason thought she was a ghost. No photographs, no interviews, no background. Just a name that appeared in contracts, patents, and strategic moves that seemed designed solely to gut Atlas from within. His private investigators brought him dossiers, thin as air, bank accounts that looped through offshore havens, Corporate shells layered like Russian dolls. No face, no fingerprints. Evelyn Marks isn't real, one investigator finally admitted. She's a construct. Jason didn't believe it. Someone was out there. Someone who knew Atlas too well. Someone who was laughing at him. Paranoia began to eat his days. At board meetings, he snapped at executives. When an analyst made a routine suggestion, Jason slammed his fist on the table so hard the man flinched. At home, Madison bore the brunt of his unraveling. "Why didn't you warn me about Helios?" he demanded one night, pacing their marble kitchen like a caged animal. "How could I? I don't even—" "Don't play dumb with me, Madison. Everyone's talking. Everyone knows Evelyn Marks made me look like a fool. And you knew." She swore she didn't. She cried. But Jason wasn't listening. His fear had sharpened into suspicion, and suspicion made him cruel. Even family dinners, once his stage for dominance, became uneasy. Olivia sat quietly, sipping wine, listening as Jason tried to mask his panic with forced confidence. "Atlas is fine," he declared too loudly. "Minor setbacks. Nothing more. We're restructuring, diversifying. It's all under control." But his hand trembled as he raised his glass. His laugh rang hollow. His words fooled no one. Olivia studied him like a surgeon studying a patient before an incision. The empire was still standing. But the man who built it? He was cracking. And cracks, Olivia knew, always spread. The paranoia spread beyond business. Jason began to see Evelyn Marks everywhere. When a rival CEO smirked during a conference, Jason wondered if he was working with her. When his chauffeur was late, Jason demanded to know if he'd been bribed. When Madison left her phone unattended, Jason checked her messages. One night, he woke at 3 a.m., certain he'd heard someone in the apartment. He grabbed the pistol he kept hidden in a drawer and stormed through every room, heart pounding. Nothing. But Jason couldn't sleep again. He poured himself another drink, sat in the dark, and whispered the name like a prayer, like a curse. Evelyn Marks. Behind the scenes, Olivia made sure the paranoia deepened. She leaked small pieces of information, not enough to expose herself, but enough to make Jason feel surrounded. A project Atlas had been secretly negotiating? Evelyn Marks swooped in first. A banker Jason trusted for years, suddenly tied to Evelyn's holding company. A rumor whispered into the right ear that Evelyn had a personal vendetta against Jason Fairchild. Jason's world became a hall of mirrors. Every deal felt compromised. Every face felt suspect. And the more he tried to fight it, the more foolish he looked. The board began to notice. Jason's rants in meetings, his erratic emails sent at 4 a.m., his obsession with a rival they couldn't even verify existed. "Maybe it's a phantom," one director suggested carefully. "Maybe Evelyn Marks is a smokescreen created by competitors. We're wasting energy chasing ghosts." Jason slammed his palm down on the table. "She's not a ghost," he snarled. "She's real. She's targeting me. She knows everything. My moves, my weaknesses, my—" He stopped. The room was silent. Directors shifted uncomfortably. A few avoided his gaze. In that moment, Jason realized something worse than losing money. He was losing faith. Not theirs. His own. Olivia watched from the shadows, patient as ever. She didn't rush the reveal. She didn't gloat. She simply fed the paranoia, drip by drip, until Jason's mask of control was nothing but shattered pieces. And she knew something else too. Paranoia doesn't just weaken men, it isolates them. Jason was pushing away Madison, alienating his board, driving loyal allies into the arms of Evelyn Marks, into her arms. And when he finally stood alone, surrounded only by fear and suspicion, Olivia would strike the final blow. Jason Fairchild had once been invincible, but now, in the quiet of his penthouse, in the dark where whiskey couldn't numb the fear, he whispered the name again. Evelyn Marks. He didn't know who she was, But he knew one thing for certain. She was winning. Olivia had never thought of herself as ruthless. Quiet, yes. Calculated, always. But ruthless? That was Jason's word. Jason's world. And yet, as she sat in the glow of her laptop, watching Atlas lose another contract to Evelyn Marks, she felt it. A cold satisfaction, a thrill, a hunger. She had created Evelyn as a mask, a way to strike from the shadows, to dismantle Jason's empire piece by piece without him ever suspecting her. But somewhere along the way, the mask had fused to her skin. Evelyn Marks wasn't just a name anymore. She was becoming real. By day, Olivia was the dutiful daughter, the overlooked sister. She played her part, smiling politely at family dinners, nodding through Jason's increasingly frantic speeches. By night, she was something else. In a private office tucked inside a nondescript building across town, Evelyn Marks thrived. Contracts flowed through her hands. Bankers deferred to her. Lawyers obeyed her. Deals that once would have taken Olivia months to negotiate now came to her with almost frightening ease. She realized something Jason had never understood. Power didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered. And people listened to whispers more than they ever listened to threats. But with power came temptation. The first time she crushed one of Jason's subsidiaries, it felt like justice. The second time, it felt like control. The third, it felt like pleasure. Her nights stretched later and later, the glow of screens reflecting in her eyes. Sleep was no longer a priority. Neither was softness. One of her associates, a hedge fund manager she had enlisted, once tried to flirt with her over dinner. Evelyn Marks smiled coldly, then gutted his company the following week when he failed to deliver. Olivia told herself it was strategy, but deep down, she knew the truth. Evelyn Marks was merciless, and Olivia was learning to love it. Still, shadows lingered. Sometimes, late at night, she would stare at her reflection in the darkened window of her office and barely recognize the woman staring back. Her hair tied sharp and neat, her eyes lined with exhaustion but burning with focus, her expression calm, detached, inhuman. Jason had always said power changed people. She used to believe he was wrong. Now she wasn't so sure. Was she still Olivia Fairchild, the sister who wanted justice? Or was she Evelyn Marks, the woman who wanted Jason's empire burned to ash? Jason, meanwhile, was unraveling faster than she expected. Her reports showed him making reckless moves, pouring money into doomed projects, alienating allies, even floating the idea of buying political influence just to push Evelyn Marks out of the game. Every move reeked of desperation, and Olivia fed it. She sent anonymous tips to journalists, nudged regulators in just the right direction, ensured whispers of Jason's erratic behavior reached the ears of his investors. She didn't need to strike directly anymore. Jason was doing the work for her. She just had to light small fires and watch him burn himself alive. But power was a double-edged sword. One evening, Madison called Olivia in tears. "He's not the same," Madison whispered. "He accuses me of lying. He doesn't sleep. He scares me, Olivia. I don't know what to do." For a moment, Olivia almost broke character, almost confessed, almost told Madison that she was the reason Jason was falling apart. But she didn't. She couldn't. Instead, she spoke softly. "Stay strong, Madison. It will pass. It always does." When she hung up, guilt clawed at her chest. For the first time, she wondered, was she destroying Jason alone, or was she dragging Madison down with him? The thought haunted her, but not enough to stop her. The final straw came during a meeting with her most trusted advisors. "We've taken 70% of his liquidity," one of them reported. "At this rate, he'll be insolvent in a year." Olivia nodded, calm and precise. "Not good enough." The room went silent. Her associate frowned. "With respect, Evelyn, this is already a victory. You've broken him. Atlas won't survive." Olivia leaned forward, her voice low. I don't want survival off the table. I want obliteration. Jason Fairchild must not crawl out of this. Not in 5 years. Not ever. I want him remembered as a man who was powerful, and then destroyed. Completely. Her advisors exchanged uneasy glances, but they nodded. Evelyn Marks had spoken. That night, Olivia returned home and sat in silence, staring at the skyline. Somewhere, deep inside, the old Olivia whispered that this was enough, that she had already won, that justice had been served. But Evelyn Marks silenced her. Justice wasn't enough. Ruin was the goal. And ruin demanded she keep going. Jason Fairchild was falling apart. But Olivia Fairchild was changing too. And the question now wasn't whether Jason would survive. It was whether Olivia would recognize herself when the ashes finally settled. Jason Fairchild had always seen himself as invincible, the kind of man who could walk into a room and bend it to his will. But now, every room felt smaller, every deal thinner, every smile false. Atlas was bleeding, and no matter how many bandages he threw on, the wounds kept multiplying. He started lashing out. At meetings, he barked orders so contradictory his executives left confused and afraid. Cut expenses, expand operations, secure loans. No, cancel the loans. We don't need them. We're strong. He'd slam fists on the boardroom table, veins bulging, face red. This Evelyn Marks doesn't exist. She's smoke. I will not lose to smoke. One by one, the old guard, men who had once sworn loyalty to him, quietly resigned. Investors pulled back. Clients whispered of instability. And Jason fought harder, like a man clawing at sand as the tide dragged him under. Madison noticed first. He wasn't sleeping. He'd pace the house at 3 a.m, muttering about rats in the walls and traitors in silk suits. His hair, once meticulously styled, grew unkempt. His shirt stayed rumpled. His phone rarely left his hand. "Jason," she whispered one night, as he stood by the window, staring at the city. "You're scaring me." He turned, eyes hollow, burning with feverish rage. "They think they can break me. They think I don't know who's behind this. But I'll crush them. I'll bury them." Madison froze. "Who, Jason? Who's doing this?" For a moment, silence. Then softly, he said, "Everyone." The paranoia consumed him. He accused his CFO of leaking documents, fired him on the spot, accused a trusted partner of colluding with Evelyn Marks, blacklisted him, destroying a decades-long alliance, even accused Madison of being careless, of talking too much at dinner parties. She wept as he shouted at her, "I can't even trust my own wife." And Olivia, watching from the shadows, felt the sting of guilt. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Jason was unraveling himself. All she had done was loosen the threads. Then came the desperate gambles. Jason poured money into a massive overseas project, a development in Dubai that promised billions, but was riddled with corruption and shady contractors. His advisors begged him to reconsider. He refused. "This will save us. This will bury Evelyn Marks once and for all." But the deal collapsed within weeks, exposing him to international scandal and legal scrutiny. The press tore into him. Headlines screamed of reckless leadership, Atlas in decline, Jason Fairchild's empire on the brink. Every article felt like a knife, and Olivia held the handle. But Jason wasn't finished. If business couldn't save him, then politics would. He began calling in favors with senators, governors, regulators, trying to push laws, bend oversight, choke Evelyn Marks' companies with red tape. Money flowed into dark corners, lobbying firms, campaign war chests. For a time, it almost worked. Evelyn's name came under sudden scrutiny. Deals were stalled. Questions were raised. Olivia tightened her grip. She leaked just enough evidence, not pointing to Evelyn Marks, but to Jason himself. Enough to suggest he was the one buying influence. The blowback was immediate. Ethics committees opened investigations. Rivals whispered about criminal charges. Jason's fury boiled over. "They're all cowards," he roared at a board meeting. "Do you know who I am? I am Jason Fairchild. I built this city's skyline. I own half of Wall Street. I am not afraid of ghosts." But fear was all that remained in his eyes. Madison tried to reach him. "You're losing yourself," she whispered. "You're pushing everyone away. Please, Jason, just stop. Take a step back." He grabbed her by the arms, shaking. "I can't stop, don't you see? If I stop, I'm dead. They want me destroyed, Madison. They want me gone. Evelyn Marks is a phantom, and she's everywhere. I'll find her. I'll burn her world to the ground." Tears streamed down Madison's face. This isn't you. But it was. This was the Jason Fairchild the world had never seen. Stripped of polish, stripped of power, nothing left but desperation and rage. Olivia watched it all unfold, through headlines, through whispers from her contacts still inside Atlas, through Madison's late-night, broken-voiced phone calls. And for the first time, she saw not just victory, but danger. Jason was cornered. And a cornered man didn't fight clean. He fought wild. He fought to destroy. If she kept pressing, Jason wouldn't just collapse. He might drag everyone down with him. Madison, the Fairchild name. Maybe even Olivia herself, if he ever learned the truth. But Evelyn Marks didn't retreat. Evelyn Marks pressed harder. Jason Fairchild wanted war. He would get one. By the end of that quarter, Atlas wasn't just wounded. It was hemorrhaging. Projects stalled. Stock plummeted. Debt piled high. Jason stood in his penthouse, staring out at the skyline he once commanded, glass of whiskey trembling in his hand. "Evelyn Marks," he whispered. A curse, a plea, a promise. He would find her, or die trying. The Fairchild penthouse had always been a sanctuary. Marble floors that gleamed like still water. Walls lined with art worth more than most families would earn in a lifetime. A view of the city that promised power, permanence, eternity. But to Madison, it had begun to feel like a cage. The air hung heavy, thick with whiskey, cigarette smoke, and Jason's anger. The man she had once adored, sharp, commanding, magnetic, had become someone else. Someone unrecognizable. She watched him pace the living room, hair disheveled, tie hanging loose, phone pressed to his ear as he screamed into the void. "You're useless, all of you. If you can't find Evelyn Marks, then what the hell am I paying you for?" The call ended with a slam of the phone against the marble countertop, the crack echoing through the penthouse like a gunshot. Madison flinched. Jason turned to her. "They're rats, every last one of them. But I'll smoke them out. I'll smoke her out." His eyes, once clear, calculating, now blazed with feverish paranoia. Madison forced a smile, even as her chest tightened. "Jason, maybe it's time to let this go." The words barely left her lips before his face twisted with fury. "Let it go? You think I can let it go? You think I can let some phantom ruin me? Ruin us? Do you know what's at stake?" Her voice broke. "What's left, Jason? You've driven away your allies, your friends. You're tearing this family apart." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then, coldly, "Maybe you should decide whose side you're on." That night, Madison lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling while Jason tossed in restless half-sleep beside her. Her mind churned. For years, she had played the role of loyal wife, standing at his side at galas, smiling for the cameras, keeping her doubts hidden behind practiced elegance. But now? Now she saw the cracks too clearly. Jason wasn't fighting for their future. He was fighting for his ego. And it was destroying him. Destroying them. She thought of Olivia, her friend, her confidant. A friend she hadn't spoken to in months, because Jason had forbidden it. A friend she still missed, still loved like family. And though she couldn't have known the full truth, she felt it. Olivia was out there, watching, waiting. And part of Madison couldn't help but wonder, was Olivia right to come after Jason? The thought terrified her, but it lingered. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Jason had called for a private dinner with a senator, one of the last men still willing to take his calls. Madison was supposed to sit at his side, play the charming hostess, make everything look perfect. She dressed in silence, slipping into a silver gown that shimmered under the light, painting her lips with trembling hands. When she walked into the dining room, Jason was already there, nursing a drink. "Smile," he ordered, without looking up. Her stomach knotted. The dinner was a disaster. Jason drank too much, ranted too freely. He accused the senator of betrayal, of cowardice, of conspiring with Evelyn Marks. His voice rose, sharp and venomous, until the senator excused himself, face pale with disgust. When the door shut behind him, Jason exploded. "You embarrassed me!" he shouted, slamming his glass against the table. Shards of crystal skittered across the floor. Madison recoiled. "I said nothing," she cried. "Nothing, Jason! Exactly!" His face was twisted, contorted with rage. "You sat there like a mute, like a traitor. Do you want to see me fall? Do you want to see me ruined?" Her voice shook, but the words spilled out before she could stop them. "You're ruining yourself." The silence that followed was worse than his shouting. He stared at her, breathing heavy, chest rising and falling. For a moment, Madison thought he might strike her. Instead, he turned away, muttering, "Maybe I married the wrong woman." The words cut deeper than any blow. Madison left the room, heart pounding, vision blurred with tears. She locked herself in the guest bedroom and sank onto the bed, shaking. This was it. Her breaking point. She could no longer be his shield, his excuse, his silent partner in destruction. For years she had believed Jason's story, that power was survival, that money was love, that loyalty was everything. But now she saw the truth. Jason didn't want a partner. He wanted a prisoner, and she was done being caged. The next morning she packed a small bag, just enough to leave without raising alarm. She told the staff she was going to visit her sister. Jason didn't even notice. He was too busy screaming at his lawyers, trying to sue Evelyn Marks out of existence. Madison didn't go to her sister's. She went to Olivia. The reunion was quiet, hesitant, heavy with unspoken truths. Olivia's face softened the moment she saw her, guilt flickering in her eyes, but also relief. Madison collapsed into her arms. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. Olivia held her, stroking her hair. "You don't have to." And in that moment, Madison didn't ask questions. She didn't want to know the full story. She didn't want to know what role Olivia had played in Jason's downfall. All she knew was this: Jason had broken her. Olivia was there to catch her. And that was enough. When Jason realized Madison was gone, something inside him snapped. He raged through the penthouse, smashing glasses, tearing through closets, demanding answers from the staff. His shouts echoed through the marble halls until his voice went hoarse. "She'll come back," he muttered to himself, pacing. "She always comes back. She knows I'm all she has. She'll come back." But she didn't. Madison had finally chosen a side, and it wasn't his. By the end of that week, Jason Fairchild wasn't just fighting Evelyn Marks. He was fighting alone. His allies gone, his wife gone, his empire collapsing beneath him. And still, he refused to surrender. Jason Fairchild would rather burn than bow. Jason Fairchild had always believed in momentum. As long as you kept moving, kept scheming, kept striking, nothing could touch you. No scandal, no rival, no storm. But now the momentum was gone. His board had voted to suspend his authority. His fortune bled daily from lawsuits, debts, and frozen accounts. The Fairchild name, once synonymous with power, had become a whisper of scandal in every drawing room and news column. And Madison. Madison was gone. He refused to think about that. Instead, he poured his rage into a new plan. His last plan. It began with the midnight calls. Old allies, distant contacts, men who owed him favors or feared his wrath. Jason promised them riches, whispered about opportunities, threatened ruin if they refused. Some hung up, others listened, a few agreed to meet. He gathered them in the back room of an exclusive club, the kind of place where the curtains were heavy and the walls too thick to eavesdrop. Jason stood at the head of the table, eyes burning with manic energy. "They think they've won," he said. "They think Evelyn Marks has destroyed me. But I still have cards to play, and if you stand with me now, you'll share in the rewards when I rise again." His voice thundered, but the men around the table shifted uneasily. They had seen the headlines, heard the whispers. Jason Fairchild was radioactive. To touch him was to risk contagion. One of them finally spoke. "What exactly are you proposing, Jason?" Jason leaned forward, his grin sharp as a blade. "A hostile strike. If Evelyn Marks wants war, then I'll give her war. She built her empire on secrets, and I know where the bodies are buried. I'll bleed her dry in the press, in the courts, in every corner of this city. She'll regret the day she ever crossed me." But his words didn't land the way they once did. Once, Jason could make men lean in with awe, fear, greed. Now, they looked at him with doubt, with pity. The meeting ended with handshakes that meant nothing, promises that would never be kept. By the time Jason left the club, the night air felt colder, heavier. He could feel it in his bones. The world was slipping through his fingers. Still, he pressed forward. He ordered investigators to dig up dirt on Evelyn, any dirt. He called journalists, offering stories too toxic to print. He filed lawsuits so aggressive and absurd they bordered on farce. But every strike missed. Evelyn's empire had been built with patience and precision. Whatever skeletons she had, Jason couldn't find them. His lawsuits were thrown out, his accusations laughed at. And the press? They no longer feared him. They fed on him. Every desperate outburst became another headline. Every public appearance, another humiliation. The final blow came when Jason tried to force his way back onto the Fairchild board. He stormed into the meeting uninvited, demanded to speak, demanded loyalty, demanded to be restored. But the men around the table didn't flinch this time. They didn't look at him as their leader. They looked at him as a liability. "Mr. Fairchild?" the chairman said coldly. "Your time here is over." Jason laughed, a brittle, broken laugh. "You think you can erase me? I am this company." But the gavel fell, the vote passed, and Jason Fairchild was officially stripped of all authority. He left the building in a daze, the world tilting beneath his feet. On the steps outside, reporters swarmed, shouting questions, cameras flashing like gunfire. "Jason, do you have a response to your removal?" "Jason, is it true Madison has left you?" "Jason, what about Evelyn Marks?" He shoved through them, snarling, but the images went viral within hours. The once untouchable titan reduced to a red-faced, ranting shadow of himself. That night, Jason returned to the penthouse. He poured himself a drink, then another, then another. The city stretched out before him, glittering and indifferent. He thought of Madison, of her silence, her absence. He thought of Olivia, though he still didn't know the full truth. And he thought of Evelyn Marks, always Evelyn, always smiling in his mind like a predator that had tasted blood. Jason Fairchild had lost everything. But as the whiskey burned down his throat, a thought curled through his mind like smoke. Not everything, not yet. Because Jason still had one weapon left, himself. If the Empire couldn't survive him, maybe it shouldn't survive at all. And if Evelyn wanted victory, she would pay for it in blood. This was not surrender. This was Jason's last counterattack, a strike born of desperation, a strike that would scorch everything in reach, himself included. Jason Fairchild never believed in endings. Endings were for weaker men, the ones who lost their nerve, their vision, their hunger. Jason had always found a way to turn defeat into survival, survival into victory. But as dawn crept through the penthouse windows, he understood that this time was different. The phone calls went unanswered. The lawyers had abandoned him. His accounts were frozen. His penthouse, once alive with parties, whispers, and dangerous deals, was silent except for the ticking of a clock he hadn't noticed in years. The world had moved on without him. Yet Jason still had one card left to play. It wasn't money, it wasn't charm, it wasn't even fear. It was spectacle. If he couldn't win back power, he would burn the battlefield so completely that Evelyn Marks and her allies would inherit nothing but ashes. He began making calls, the few contacts who still picked up out of morbid curiosity. He fed them rumors, plans, threats. He spoke of a press conference that would expose everything. He hinted at explosive files, secret recordings, a reckoning that would shake the city. And word spread. By nightfall, the reporters were gathering outside, their cameras hungry. The vultures had circled for months, and Jason was finally promising a feast. But what none of them realized was that Jason had nothing. No files, no evidence, just rage. And rage was all he needed. He stepped up to the microphone the next morning, hair disheveled, suit wrinkled, eyes burning with a manic gleam. "They think they can destroy Jason Fairchild," he snarled, his voice echoing through the speakers. "They think Evelyn Marks can replace me, erase me, bury me. But I built this empire. I am the empire. And if I go down, I will take them all with me." His words spilled out like fire, wild, incoherent, destructive. He named names, accused rivals of treachery, hinted at scandals so outrageous that even the most reckless journalist hesitated to print them. The cameras captured everything. And then, with a sudden, terrible clarity, Jason turned the final blow inward. "If you want to see what happens when you betray Jason Fairchild," he hissed, "watch closely." He raised the glass in his hand, whiskey laced with something darker, and drained it in one defiant gulp. The crowd gasped. The cameras zoomed. Jason Fairchild collapsed on the stage, the Empire's last performance complete. For a moment, the world froze. And then it moved on. Madison watched the footage from a quiet apartment across the city. Her hands trembled as she set down the remote. Jason's voice still rang in her ears, the same voice that had once charmed her, once controlled her. Now it was only noise, a ghost fading into silence. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She simply breathed. For the first time in years, she felt something close to freedom. Olivia heard the news in a dim cafe, the words scrolling across a television screen. She stared for a long time, trying to feel something. Relief, closure, justice. But all she felt was tired. Jason had been a storm all her life, sometimes distant, sometimes raging overhead. And now the storm was gone, leaving only the wreckage behind. She glanced down at her phone. A message from Madison blinked on the screen. "We should talk." And so they did. The first meeting was cautious, fragile. Two women bound not by friendship, but by scars. Madison carried guilt. Olivia carried grief. But in their shared pain, something unexpected began to form. A fragile alliance, a chance to rebuild on ground scorched by Jason's fire. They didn't forgive. They didn't forget. But they understood each other in a way no one else ever could. Evelyn Marks, meanwhile, stood at the window of her office, the city sprawling beneath her. Jason Fairchild was gone. His empire lay in ruins. And yet, Evelyn knew better than to celebrate. Men like Jason didn't vanish cleanly. Their shadows lingered. Their damage endured. She allowed herself a single smile, not of triumph, but of recognition. The game was never truly over. In the months that followed, the Fairchild name faded from the headlines, swallowed by fresher scandals. Jason became a cautionary tale, another fallen titan. But for Madison and Olivia, his ghost lingered. They met again and again, sometimes over coffee, sometimes in silence, sometimes in late-night conversations that cracked open old wounds. Slowly, painfully, they began to stitch together something new. Not love, not family, but survival. And survival, after Jason Fairchild, was victory enough. Jason's empire was gone. His schemes ended in fire and spectacle. But the people he tried to own, to break, to use, they endured. And in the quiet that followed, that endurance became the real revenge.